America's biggest online retailer just threw down another gauntlet. Amazon now sells cars. But dealerships still own the inventory, and all the old economic forces still matter, like supply and demand, pricing, and profit. That said, the innovative dealers are now using AI in a whole host of ways to gather intelligence, expedite sales, and optimize cash flow. Learn more on this episode of Future Proof.
The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. Yet. Today's world teems with innovation. The nexus of hardware, software, and human ingenuity promises a revolution in possibilities. What does tomorrow look like? Witness Future Proof.
Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh, is here with two awesome guests. We got a couple experts on the line today to talk about the automotive industry and in particular dealerships. What is going on with the dealerships in the world today? A lot is going on. A little company you may have heard of called Amazon has decided to enter the fray. And I think lots and lots of brick and mortar shops know all about Amazon and the Amazon effect. It has had a dramatic impact on how people buy products. But cars, can Amazon really help us buy cars? We're going to be talking to Chuck Bratton of a company called FPT and also Kevin Tynan of a company called The Presidio Group. And I'll just start us off here and say everybody knows what it's like going to a dealership. It's a big purchase, it's a lot of money, it's very serious. You're always like, okay, don't get sold, don't get sold. Go in, let's have our game plan, right? In fact, a friend of mine, her father always made sure to go to like three, four dealerships and really hammer these guys and get the best price and say, all right, we'll be back. And like he would do it religiously, very disciplined, and it worked. Not everyone can be that good. Let's be honest. A lot of times you go in, you're all strong, and you're like, all right, I just want that car, and you buy it. Well, the question we want to ask today is how are all these different technologies going to impact the car buying experience, especially from a dealership perspective? If Amazon is moving in, you've got Carvana, you've got a bunch of other players, new players, and you have new technologies too. So think about generative AI. How big a deal is that for car dealerships? Can this technology be used? There are lots and lots of different kinds of AI. Gen AI just has the attention of the world now because of ChatGPT, because of course, Gemini and Anthropic and these other guys. ChatGPT is just crushing the market, though. I saw a stat today that says it's like 80%. So they are clearly the 800-pound gorilla. Does that matter? Does it matter for the dealership industry? Well, someone who knows is Kevin Tynan of the Presidio Group. So, Kevin, welcome to Inside Analysis. Tell us a bit about yourself and your focus on dealerships.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. So I got my start way back in the 1990s on Wall Street, covering the auto industry for a little investment bank. And ideally, I was the guy who called bankruptcy inevitable for the automakers in about 2005. And then a
Wow.
couple of years later, that actually played out. And by then, I had been recruited to create a research department for Bloomberg called Bloomberg Intelligence, the automotive coverage there. So built that, did that for 15 years, and then last year I joined the Presidio Group, which is a automotive technology investment bank. So we're looking at a lot of these technology solutions, AI, all across the dealer value chain. And also we do dealership merger and acquisition advisory. So we're involved in the buy sell side of the market and really involved closely with the dealers. So very interesting. And the thing I would say, in regards to your intro is, with all the changes in technology, and we've seen this, since I started in the industry in 1998 or whatever year it was, a lot of the basic business economics still matter. Supply and demand, how that drives pricing, and how much supply there is, how much inventory on the ground really will drive the demand level. Because, and I tell people this all the time, no manufacturer builds automobiles, can't sell them, and buries them in the ground. Everything gets sold. The question is, what does the deal ultimately end up looking like? And I think these technologies and people and companies like Amazon make that transaction easier, faster, and possibly more profitable. But the business economics matter.
Yeah. Well, and so just real quick, Amazon entering the fray here, obviously that puts pressure on dealerships. I don't know the ins and outs of how they're actually going about these things. Are they partnering with some dealerships, or give us the lowdown on what's happening there and what kind of impact we can expect?
Well, ultimately, keep in mind the dealer owns the inventory, whether it's new vehicles or whether it's used vehicles. So Amazon basically went to the OEMs, which in my mind was kind of a strange approach, right? Because the OEM doesn't own the inventory. And then I thought that that might have put the dealerships on a little bit of notice to say, well, what's your end game here? But ultimately, it's the dealer's inventory, new and used. So if you want to think about it in the basic terms, Amazon is a different set of eyeballs, but it's a very similar process to what you would expect from a cars.com or auto trader or car gurus and these companies. And I don't want to call them just lead generators. They do a lot more than that, but that's really the space that Amazon is pushing into, saying that the traditional car buyer may be visiting a car. I have a million searches set up on every car website as a car guy, and Amazon is just another outlet for those dealers for new and used inventory. But there's already developed competitors in that space facing off against Amazon.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's bring in Chuck Bratton from FPT. And Chuck, you're also focused on this space. You've got some hard experience, I'm sure, in the industry. Tell us a bit about yourself, real quick, and then what's going on here. Why do you think Amazon is angling to get into this? Because it's a pretty specialized space, and as Kevin just said, the dealers still own the inventory, so they got to go through them at some point in time. But tell us a bit about yourself and where you see things going here.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks, Eric, for having me on. Really appreciate it. I'm Chuck Bratton, VP of Solutions at FPT Software, the largest software development company you've never heard of. We have some 60,000 employees. We do a lot of engineering development work for big companies like Cox, Automotive. We've many other manufacturers in the auto space that we've done engineering work for. My specialty is the software engineering and development side for products. And I see Amazon as being really just another disruptor in an already busy channel of people trying to get some space. They're not a dealer replacement, as Kevin pointed out. They're a lot about getting top of the funnel and helping that happen all the way down. What we do at FPT is look at the engineering side, how we can improve the customer experience or the processing experience inside the dealership. Dealerships have just a plethora of applications they have to deal with. And companies like FPT come in and help really hone that down to how can we help you improve your customer experience by providing tool sets that are specific to things like F&I, how we can make that happen faster, how can we ingest data from documentation faster, not just with simplified OCR reading, but now we're layering on top Gen AI, because if you start partnering ideas or concepts like OCR and Gen AI, now you can go and process a document, a title, or any other kind of documentation that comes in from a transaction much faster. You can improve on that. We're also looking at accelerator tool sets that really change the experience in the showroom. Now we've gone from a simplified showroom to a smart showroom where we can turn a dealership into really like an AI-driven space, leveraging existing infrastructure really to improve customer interactions. Things like a whole system that's built around the cameras recognize the people as the car pulls in the parking lot. It'll pull the data sources from Carfax. It'll do
Wow.
facial recognition from the CRM, where it's retained all. This is all can do and is available today. So managers in real time can look who's on the lot, who's getting taken care of, what did they drive in on, what are some key insights like their purchasing potential or impact or in sentiment. All these things are available. So you can have your sales staff getting instant prompts saying XYZ is looking at a car in the front lot. Here's what may be a prompt as you walk up and introduce yourself and start closing those deals faster, making for a smoother customer experience.
Yeah, and if I can, Eric, Chuck makes a good point. It was nuanced, but I just want to circle back to it is that when you think about a franchise dealer, it's really four businesses, maybe even five under one roof, right? So what he's talking about, and what I always mention to clients and to even investors is to say, look, there's the ability, the revenue diversity of a franchise dealer is when the new vehicle market might tighten up a little bit, you focus a little bit harder on your pre-owned business, your parts business, your service business, your F&I business. So they really have that revenue flexibility to kind of go where the money is. And I think we're getting into a point right now with affordability gone away in the industry, that dealers are cycling to some of those other business units, maybe in pre-owned, maybe parts counters, service bays. And what Chuck's talking about is very important to now, if you can wring out margin in those businesses using some of this technology, that we're at that point where dealers are starting to pivot to some of those or needing to pivot to some of those other businesses.
Hmm.
Right, like
Yeah.
especially with service side.
Mm.
The service does have a lot of engineering space in the service side, and it works quite well. But using Gen AI, you can actually enhance that. You can start watching the service bay. You can start doing recognition as the car movements, what the service people are actually doing, helping the service people perform their work faster, more efficiently. So you can now drive down the effort it takes. So now me as a service person can come in and repair a car a lot faster than I could before because I'll get prompted all the way through the process because Gen AI can help me as I'm working the car and troubleshooting the car's issues to make this a faster, cleaner experience.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. And maybe I'll throw this over to you, Chuck, and then over to Kevin for comment. What I'm hearing is something that I've thought for quite some time now, which is that the value of AI will often manifest in the form of suggestions or recommendations, tracking processes and saying, hey, don't forget about this or don't forget about that, because machines don't forget. I mean, you can have a failure, a disk can die or computer can die, but just as a general rule, if you have a system set up with the appropriate steps and control points, it's there by your side helping you along the way, right, Chuck?
Right. So the inference technology has actually been around for quite a while, but this hasn't been able to really implement in ways that we see in the retail space or in our consumer space. But it's actually coming online right now. A lot of industries are starting to use that. We built applications for manufacturing facilities where we can watch the people in the manufacturing and to see if they're doing it right, if they're doing it wrong, are they dressed correctly, are they having an argument? Is that a problem? Does someone need to intervene?
Hmm.
But you fast forward it into this space of retail car sales, you can look at them and it can quite well because it uses data, rationalizes a large amount of data to be able to look at a person to see what's their physical interactions. Do they look like they're calm, happy, sad, mad? And you can really you can watch their people say, well, I'm not, I pretend to be a less affluent person when I walk into a dealership so I don't get taken advantage of. Yes, but you wear Gucci shoes and you have a Rolex on and you have, a Coach purse. So it can do a lot of things to really figure out what your intent is.
Hmm. That's wild. Is that, I'll throw it over to Kevin. How commonplace is that among dealerships to have that kind of advanced technology? Is that like 1 in 100, 1 in 50, 1 in 20? What do you think?
Yeah, well, the thing with dealerships is, and as you can imagine now, if you consider the five businesses that we talked about and how much software and how many systems are coming at dealers every single day saying exactly things like that. We can make you more efficient here. We can generate some margin for you there, right? Like, and it becomes so fragmented. And then those systems have to talk to each other and work together in the entire enterprise. And I see that a lot is that dealers are almost exhausted with the amount of technology that comes at them and what it can do. And while you understand that when something is fragmented, you have more pain points or more potential failures, but it's also a space where I think that you don't want one CRM running the entire business because if that goes, then everything's gone. So it's this balance of diversity in terms of your systems, but not so many that you wind up paying for things you don't use or you don't use efficiently. So it's always that sort of balance for dealers, at least as I see it, that you want efficient systems, but it starts to overwhelm, quite honestly.
Yeah, we call it
Yeah.
tool sprawl. When there's too many tool sets, software's tool sets that make it worthwhile. What we're really focusing on is using the current tool sets because all those tool sets have API connectivity, so we can reach out and talk to them. We want to, what we're looking at is layering on top where Gen AI is strong. It's not going to be able to help solve your customers, financial problems, but it's certainly going to be able to recognize their intent. It's certainly going to be able to bring in information from all the different disparaging silos and and rationalize that data. That's what it does really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also it kind of helps on that front end. I mean, you were kind of alluding to this, Chuck, because it can speak in natural language. So, especially if it's internally focused, you don't run the risks of hallucinations. There was the one story of, I can't remember what dealer it was, but someone asked on the website which car to buy, and it recommended a different car that they don't even sell. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, like, don't do that. So, we do want to come up with ways to kind of ground the Gen AI. But as long as it's
Exactly.
internally focused, it's up to the person interacting with it to use the information or not, right, Chuck?
Right, because it does have hallucination problems because it has too much inference in a particular way. It can be trained to be bad. So you're right. If you can ground it, which is what we do to make sure that it doesn't go off the reservation, it's focused on specific areas so that what we're trying to educate or inform the internals of how it can interact more efficiently with the client. So what the client feels on their side, which is the most important piece, is the team, the seller, and every team member after that comes at them with the right information, the right answers at the right time. So the client is now happier with the experience and doesn't feel like they've being watched by, the Terminator or something. They feel more engaged in the interaction.
Hmm. Well, and I think that's one of the real keys, right? Because the experience going into a dealership is very stressful. And to your point, both of you, over the years, it has taken a long time. Like once you decide, okay, I want to get this car, you're going to be in there for another hour, sometimes 90 minutes, as they're hammering through all this documentation. And, Chuck, I think you'd mentioned at the top of the hour here some of the innovations in that space. And you see this in financial services too. We got our first break coming up here in a second, but you see this in financial services, being able to ping all these different systems, find out, okay, this is the person, we got the credit score, we got the title of his existing car, like all these things you can do much faster now. And that is very good news for the customer experience because no one likes to wait. No one likes to just lose time sitting around. And it just makes everything feel better if it all flows and the dealer has the right information. And they can make better decisions too. The more data they have about this prospect coming in the door, the better off they can do in terms of structuring their deals and having confidence that it's a deal that's going to go through and it's a deal that's going to continue to be paid for because that's the other side is that you got to pay it over time. Kevin, you just made a really, really good point about how a new experience can happen for people coming into the dealership. Explain what you were talking about there.
Yeah, as Chuck was talking about technology and being able to do things in advance, right? You have the customer's credit score, you have, what they want as down payment, what their trade-in is valued at, and all those things. I think what you're able to do as a dealership is sort of bring the customer around to your side of the desk and look at a computer screen together with all these factors, and you can move things around longer term, shorter term, uh, bigger down payment, a little bit more value, maybe take a couple bucks off the new vehicle, and you can kind of shape things on the same team as the customer, as opposed to walking into a dealership and it's a face off, right? You sit on one side of
Right.
the desk, I sit on the other, and then we battle it out. I usually bring my wife for that situation, and then I wind up apologizing to the sales guy after that I let her loose on you. But it's a very adversarial relationship when you go in the dealership. You're ready for battle, and I think that sort of nuanced difference of being on the same side of the desk as the consumer and sort of blaming it on the on the way. That's, those are the numbers. The numbers are the numbers, and the software figured it out, and it's going to help us get to a solution. I think is maybe not revolutionary in terms of sales technique, but it's a big deal. It's a big difference.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think
Chuck,
it
what do you
definitely
think?
impacts. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, well, it's because now, like, I've always believed that, transparency is the ultimate emboldening agent for trust, right? If you can see what's happening, people understand. It's when you can't see what's happening
Right.
that people have their doubts. And so if you just turn the screen around and say, well, this is what we're getting from this system and this is what that's saying, et cetera, these are our options. Where do you want to play in there? And that's a very significant game changer in terms of the user, the buyer experience, but also the transaction itself. And it educates people as well. I mean, I'm one of these people. I'm always like peeking around to see what's on the screen because I'm a tech guy and I'm a information systems guy. So I want to see what information do you have. And at AT&T and T and Verizon and some of these stores, they've done a good job in surfacing a lot of information for the person at the desk to use, like how long has this person been around, what's the customer lifetime value, all these kinds of things. But Chuck, I'll throw it back to you. This whole idea of, hey, it's us against them, not me against you, that's a very powerful paradigm shift. What do you think, Chuck?
Certainly, that what it does is shortens up the whole process time because remember back in the day we had to go talk to the manager and and he, the price is this and you come back with the price is that and you go back and forth. And I don't know about you, you had mentioned 90 minutes in a car dealership. Typical time for me was like 3 to 4 hours.
Oh, it's
Um,
brutal.
when my kids were younger, the little kids, I would bring them to the dealership to buy a car because that sped up the time because no one wants to deal with a bunch of screaming little kids. That was my track. And Kevin's was his wife. I just brought the little kids in. It worked every time, but not well. We came out, shell shocked. So that's part of the process is um, really you want to give that comfort to the customer. They want to feel good about the experience. And if they feel good about the experience, then you move to the F&I piece where you want to start talking about those add-ons, the things that really make a big difference for the dealership is how successful they are and their, insurance side of it and the tools that are and the products that are available. So as a happy customer, I'm far more willing to be talk to you about those things, that become available. Where I think Amazon may struggle a little bit. Yes, there's, I've seen the site, the Amazon site. You can check a box if you want, the aftermarket insurance, but those are boxes to check. If you have a person in front of you that you like and has helped you buy a car, you trust, you'll be moving a lot faster and more confident in those decisions.
Hmm. Well, and a lot of times, the dealership has X amount of leverage, but there is only X amount of leverage. I'll throw it over to Kevin. I'm just wondering when you factor in all these developments that we're seeing from the intelligent dealership, Amazon's play. Of course, now we have tariffs on foreign cars. I mean, that's got to be a factor that's coming into play. How nimble can dealers be in terms of taking a strategic view of their inventory versus their cash flow versus consumer sentiment? And do you see dealers really getting into understanding this neighborhood versus that neighborhood and like who might want like which kinds of cars? How deep can it get in terms of the analysis?
Yeah, and here's the problem, Eric. So the U.S. auto industry, and if you haven't noticed, it's not difficult to see that average transaction price 48, almost $49,000 average, right? You have automakers, the domestics, Ford, GM brands, the Stellantis, CDJR, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram brands, right, are up into the mid 50% because truck mix is so heavy. So all these automakers who were having trouble making money at the bottom of the price range, affordable vehicles, which people say affordable, I say unprofitable. You don't want to sell a lot of those things, right? And every automaker has moved up market, more truck, less car, and that has driven average transaction price. And here's how I break it down for people. 2016 was the highest volume year in history in the US.
Wow.
17.5 million vehicles was average $35,000 per each. When you multiply those two things together and think of the revenue pool, it's about $610 billion dollars. This year we'll do 16 million vehicles, but we'll do it at $49,000. It's It's about $180 billion larger market by selling 1.5 million fewer vehicles.
Mm.
So think about that. So as a dealer, you're thinking, I'm selling fewer units, there's fewer transactions, and the ancillary benefits of those transactions, be it F&I, be it upselling warranty or creating a future service customer, right? You don't have as many of those transactions. Now, what you did in the dealership was worth more because that vehicle is now a $50,000 vehicle instead of a $35,000 vehicle. But the industry by volume gets smaller while it gets larger by revenue. And this is not an accident. This is orchestrated. Every automaker has moved away from the bottom, affordable slash unprofitable part of the market. And dealers have to understand that. And that's why I say it all comes back to the business fundamentals. So what you have is you have manufacturers building fewer vehicles, but more expensive ones, right? And then the dealerships have to understand that you're going to have the opportunity for firmer pricing and stronger margins because in the days of 2016, we would have 4 million units of inventory on the ground, but only sell 1 million units per month. So break that down. You have 40 vehicles for 10 buyers. In 21 and 22, those numbers came in line. We had a million buyers, but only 900,000 units of inventory. People were paying over MSRP. And now we're back to 3 million units of inventory for those same million buyers. So it's not quite as bad as it was in 2019 and earlier, but it's not as tight as it was. And that was unsustainable, that 21 and 22 period. But it's the most profitable period for dealerships in history. And the market was less than 14 million units. So there's this dynamic of supply and demand where if manufacturers overproduce, there goes pricing and margin power and discounting and incentives come in. So I think the industry is trying to move to that place, Eric, where it's fewer units, higher transaction price, and we're turning away from some buyers because on a P&L, on an income statement, they're not great buyers. They're buyers of our unprofitable things, and we just don't want to live there anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you sparked the thought in my brain here. I'm going to throw it over to Chuck and then back to Kevin. How much of a how much of a virtuous circle do you have in terms of understanding where customer purchasing tendencies are and this next generation coming out? I know the cycle times have gotten much tighter in the last few years, all across industrial manufacturing. But with cars, obviously, you have so many decisions to make about what's going to go in that thing, what the packages are going to be, what the upsells are going to be, all that stuff, because you have to get one complete working car. Like you don't want to look at bits and pieces of it, right? What did someone say the other day? Like all the parts for a car does not make a car. Like you have to put all that stuff together. So how closed is the loop of understanding what the sentiment is about what people want to buy and that design process at the actual manufacturers?
So nowadays, it's all about big data and taking that data and understanding how to rationalize it. Gen AI is one of those tools, but the straight out data management tells you a lot what's going on. And the more data you have, the better choices or decisions you can make in the future. That's why we see so much data moving off, mainframes and storefronts, and it's all going to the cloud. Cloud is now a huge aspect of data management, and manufacturers and dealerships, mainly the manufacturers, spend a great deal of time looking at that data so they can make better decisions going forward. To your point about the cars getting more expensive and fewer of those entry level cars, a lot of it has to do with first off, the cars are far more reliable than they have ever been in the history of automotive car. I mean, there was a day when a 100,000-mile car was junk. Now 300,000 miles is more along those lines. That makes a big difference. So your secondary market is kind of taken over for some of those entry level buyers who before couldn't do that, and that's part of what the dynamics around understanding the data and those dealerships and manufacturers are really getting much better. And that's what we do. We really get involved in helping them rationalize the data, format the data so they can make good decisions out of it.